Hi folks. One of the frequently asked questions, not just for me, but for everybody teaching Soto-style Shikantaza type Zazen, is what do you think about when you're doing Zazen? Or variations of it are kind of a criticism that if you're not doing anything during your Zazen, then you're just wasting your time. What's the difference between just sitting there and goofing off, right? So, I would like to give you a very complicated answer to that question by referencing a piece of writing by Dogen called Fukan Zazengi. Fukan Zazengi can be found in Book 1 of Dogen's Shobogenzo in the Nishijima Cross translation. I'm also going to leave some links below to pages I found this morning that have multiple translations of Fukan Zazengi, including translations where you can look at them side by side, line by line, in case you don't trust the Nishijima Cross version. What I found interesting in looking over them just now is that Fukan Zazengi happens to be one of the cases where the translations are almost all pretty much identical. Sometimes when you look at different translations of Dogen, the translations can be so different that it's hardly recognizable as the same piece. But in Fukan Zazengi, they're very, very close, no matter who translates it. So what I'm going to do right now first is I'm going to read you, like story time, Fukan Zazengi. But don't worry, it's pretty short. Nishijima and Cross title their version Universal Guide to the Standard Method of Zazen, Rufubon, the popular edition. There are two versions of Fukan Zazengi, but most people deal with the so-called Rufubon, and then there's a previous version which looks like it was a draft for Fukan Zazengi. So this looks like what's the completed piece, the one he intended for audiences. Now, when we research it, the truth originally is all around. Why should we rely upon practice and experience? That's one of the things that's kind of a sticky point there in Zen, is differentiating between practice and experience. That is the idea that you practice in order to have an experience. In Dogen's way of understanding Zazen, the practice is the experience. So Zazen is enlightenment. The real vehicle exists naturally. Why should we put forth great effort? Furthermore, the whole body far transcends dust and dirt. Who could believe in the means of sweeping and polishing? Which is a reference to an old poem that, I'm not even going to go into the history of it, but just take it that there's a reference to an old poem about sweeping and polishing the mind. And he's saying that's not what we do. In general, we do not stray from the right state. Of what use, then, are the tiptoes of training? Now, there's one point where the translations kind of differentiate, but I don't think the line itself is all that important, but that tiptoes bit tends to mess a lot of people up when they try to translate it, because it's a weird phrase. However, if there is 1,000th or 100th of a gap, the separation is as great as that between heaven and earth. And if a trace of disagreement arises, we lose the mind in confusion. Proud of our understanding and richly endowed with realization, we obtain special states of insight. We attain the truth. We clarify the mind. We acquire the zeal that pierces the sky. We ramble through remote intellectual spheres, going in with the head, and yet we have almost completely lost the vigorous road of getting the body out. This is my favorite part of Fukan Zazengi, because he describes this, wonderful sort of enlightened state which everybody strives for when they do Zazen, and then at the end of it he says, nah, that's not it. Moreover, we can still see the traces of the 6 years spent sitting up straight by the natural sage of Jetavana Park, that's the Buddha. We can still hear rumors of the 9 years spent facing the wall by the transmitter of the mind seal of Shaolin, that's Bodhidharma. The ancient saints were like that already. How could people today fail to make effort? In other words, the ancient ones all did Zazen, why are you not doing it? Therefore, we should cease the intellectual work of studying sayings and chasing words. We should learn the backward step of turning light and reflecting. Body and mind will naturally fall away, and the original features will manifest themselves before us. If we want to attain the matter of the ineffable, we should practice the matter of the ineffable at once. In general, a quiet room is good for practicing Zazen, and food and drink are taken in moderation. Cast aside all involvements. Give the myriad things a rest. Do not think of good and bad. Do not consider right and wrong. Stop the driving movement of mind, will, consciousness. Cease intellectual consideration through images, thoughts, and reflections. Do not aim to become a Buddha. How could this be connected with sitting or lying down? We usually spread a thick mat on the place where we sit and use a round cushion on top of that. Either sit in the full lotus posture or sit in the half lotus posture. To sit in the full lotus posture, first put the right foot on the left thigh, then put the left foot on the right thigh. To sit in the half lotus posture, just press the left foot into the right thigh. Now, I'm going to do a whole separate video on this, I think. The legs are not the important part of Zazen. There are a bunch of ways you can arrange your legs, and Dogen is just giving 2 examples of the standard one. The much more important part is to find a place where you can balance your spine on top of your hips so that it stands up straight without it being supported by the back of a chair or something like that. Spread the clothing loosely and make it neat. Then put the right hand above the left foot and place the left hand on the right palm. The thumbs meet and support each other. Just make the body right and sit up straight. Do not lean to the left, incline to the right, slouch forward, or lean backward. The ears must be aligned with the shoulders and the nose aligned with the navel. Hold the tongue against the palate. Keep the lips and teeth closed. Keep the eyes open. Breathe softly through the nose. Notice that's a whole big paragraph, or 2 paragraphs in the English version, on the physical posture. That's important. When the physical posture is already settled, make 1 complete exhalation and sway left and right. Sitting immovably in the mountain still state, think about this concrete state beyond thinking. How can the state beyond thinking be thought about? It is different from thinking. This is just the pivot of Zazen, and I'll talk about that later. This sitting in Zazen is not learning Zen concentration, so it's not some kind of concentration exercise where you judge it according to whether you're feeling concentrated or not. It's not what it is. It is simply the peaceful and joyful gait of Dharma. It is the practice and experience which perfectly realizes the state of Bodhi, which is enlightenment. The universe is conspicuously realized, and restrictions and hindrances never reach it. To grasp this meaning is to be like a dragon that has found water, or like a tiger in its mountain stronghold. Remember, the right Dharma is naturally manifesting itself before us, and darkness and distraction have dropped away already. When we arise from sitting, we should move the body slowly and stand up calmly. We should not be hurried or violent. We see in the past that those who transcended the common and transcended the sacred, and those who died while sitting or died while standing, relied totally on this power. Moreover, the changing of the moment through the means of a finger, a pole, a needle, or a wooden clapper, and the experiences of the state through the manifestation of a whisk, a fist, a staff, or a shout, can never be understood by thinking and discrimination. And all of those are references to old koan stories of people attaining enlightenment, and the fist and the whisk and the shout and all that stuff. So don't worry about that. How could they be known through mystical powers or practice and experience? Again, this thing about practice and experience being separated. He's saying practice and experience are one. They may be dignified behavior beyond sound and form. How could they be anything other than criteria that precede knowing and seeing? Therefore, do not discuss intelligence as superior and stupidity as inferior. Do not choose between clever people and dull ones. This I like, because I'm kind of a dumbass, so I like the fact that we don't worry about people who are clever as being better. If we single-mindedly make effort in Zazen, that truly is pursuit of the truth. Practice and experience is naturally untainted. Actions are more balanced and constant. In general, the Buddhist ancestors of this world and of other directions, of the Western heavens and of the Eastern lands, that's Western heavens is the India, and Eastern lands is China, Japan, Korea, all similarly maintain the Buddha's posture and solely indulge in the custom of our religion. There's probably a difference of translating that, but it's basically saying everybody does Zazen. They simply devote themselves to sitting and are caught by the still state. Although there are myriad distinctions and thousands of differences, we should just practice Zazen and pursue the truth. Why should we abandon our own seat on the floor to come and go without purpose through dusty borders of foreign lands, which is about people seeking enlightenment somewhere other than where they are, which is, Philadelphia or Denver or Akron, Ohio, or wherever you happen to be. If we misplace one step, we pass over the moment of the present. We have already received the essential pivot, which is the human body, which is a reference to the Buddhist idea that the best thing, if you want to pursue the truth, is to be born as a human. If you're born as a god, you can't pursue the truth because everything is too beautiful. If you're born in one of the lower states, you can't do it because you're too busy just, fighting and dealing with stuff. Whether you want to believe that literally or not is up to you. I kind of take it with a grain of salt. We must never pass time in vain. We are maintaining and relying upon the pivot essence, which is the Buddha's truth. Who could wish to idly enjoy sparks that fly from a flint? And that's just a reference to an old-timey pastime, probably the equivalent of playing with your Nintendo or PlayStation 2 or whatever the video game of choice is these days. I'm not sure, because I don't do video games. What is more, the body is like a dewdrop on a blade of grass. Life passes like a flash of lightning. Suddenly it is gone. In an instant it is lost. I beseech you, noble friends, in learning through experience, do not become so accustomed to images that you are dismayed by the real dragon. And that's a reference to an old story in which this guy is really excited about collecting dragons, carvings of dragons, pictures of dragons, everything he has of dragons, sort of the way I collect Godzilla stuff. And one day a real dragon, let's say the real Godzilla, shows up at his door thinking, I'm going to surprise this guy. He loves dragons so much, he'll love meeting a real dragon. And when he sees the real dragon, he runs away. So it's a metaphor for the idea of thinking about doing a practice. Like a lot of people think, like, I'm going to start meditating one of these days, and actually getting down to doing it. Devote effort to the truth which is directly accessible and straightforward. Revere people who are beyond study and without intention. Accord with the Bodhi of the Buddhas, the enlightenment of the Buddhas. Become a rightful successor to the samadhi of the patriarchs. Patriarchs is the older translation. These days people prefer ancestors, Buddhist ancestors, the teachers who came before, because they can be men or women. If you practice the state like this for a long time, you will surely become the state like this itself. The treasure house will open naturally, and you will be free to receive and to use its contents as you like. The end. So, he doesn't say very much about what to think about during Zazen. Let's look at what he says. Cast aside all involvements, give the myriad things a rest. Do not think of good and bad. Do not consider right and wrong. Stop the driving movement of mind, will, consciousness. Cease intellectual consideration through images, thoughts, and reflections. Do not aim to become a Buddha. So, this, here's how I take this. When I am sitting Zazen, I am trying to let go of thoughts and ideas. And the one he really pounds in is do not think of good and bad, do not consider right and wrong. Sometimes people make that too big of a thing. They're like, don't think about right and wrong, don't think about good and evil, what about, you can go crazy. I take this to mean something much more immediate than that, is don't judge your Zazen. Don't sit there thinking, this isn't right, this is bad, I'm not doing it right. Don't worry about that. Don't judge it. Just sit with it. I just try to let thoughts go. Opening the hand of thought is how Uchiyama Roshi put it. So I just try to think of it that way. You're holding on to your thoughts with your hand, well, open them. It's impossible to make your thoughts stop. Another thing Uchiyama Roshi said was that thoughts are like the secretion of your brain. Your stomach, when it's in your gut there, secretes stomach acid. And you wouldn't want to make it stop secreting stomach acid because that would be bad. It's the same thing with thought. Your brain is going to produce thought. It's in there doing stuff, and your conscious perception of what it's doing is thought. Trying to make that stop is a fool's errand. You're not going to do it. But what you can do is not pay attention to it. So it just kind of goes. So you're not playing with words and images like he says. You're just letting them go and flow out as quickly as they flow in. Easier said than done, but if you practice it, you can do it. Then we get to everybody's favorite line. Think about this concrete state beyond thinking. How can the state beyond thinking be thought about? It is different from thinking. There are a bunch of different ways of translating that. The initial phrase is Shiryo ko fushiryo te, and it's Chinese actually, so I don't know how a Chinese person would pronounce that, but that's how you would pronounce it in Japanese. And then he contrasts two different things. He says fushiryo, that's what Nishijima and Cross translate as the state beyond thinking. And then he says hishiryo, and that's what they translate as it is different from thinking. I saw a guy at Tassajara or somewhere give a lecture about Fukan Zazengi in which he said Fushiryo and Hishiryo are basically two statements of the same thing. This is because he'd learned Japanese from books and he'd never actually been to Japan, or maybe hadn't spent time there, but there is a difference. Shiryo is here translated as thinking, but it's more like consideration. So it's more like deliberately thinking. It's like playing with those images and things that come up in your head rather than letting them go. So that's what he means by thinking. Shiryo is consideration. The fu is a kind of a mild negation, non-thinking or not thinking, and the hi in hishiryo is found in words in Japanese that are translated to things like immoral or illegal. So it's more like the il in illegal or the im in immoral. So it's a stronger sort of denial. It's like it's totally not consideration. And what I take that to mean is I sit there and remember that I'm not supposed to be considering things. That's, to me, thinking the thought of non-thinking. Maybe it's a simplistic interpretation of it, but that's the one that works for me. And when I remind myself of that, then I remember to let go of the stuff that comes up and keep focused on what I'm doing. I don't judge myself too harshly on whether I'm real focused or not real focused. Some days are better than others, but you just do it anyway. That's the way I think of it. So I just sit there and I'm trying not to think and ponder and whatever, but sometimes it happens, especially if I'm sitting before I'm supposed to give a talk or something. I'm thinking about the talk I'm going to give, or I'm thinking about a video I'm going to make later. That's what was going on this morning. But I try to let that go when I remember that I'm supposed to let that go. So that's my idea of what it means to be thinking the thought of non-thinking. Remember that you're supposed to not be thinking. And when you can do that, it is utterly different from thinking. So there is something, a state, which is very different from thinking, and that is non-thinking. When you're letting go of thoughts, when you're opening the hand of thought and letting them go, that is described by Dogen as being utterly different from thinking. So there you go. That was another long video. People seem to enjoy these long videos, so I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time. Remember, I am supported by your donations via Patreon and PayPal. The links to do that are below. That really helps me. Book royalties are not sufficient to keep me going. Whenever tax season comes up, I am again reminded how little I get for book royalties, how little I get for speaking fees, and that most of my income comes from you guys donating. Thank you very much, and I'll try to keep up doing more videos for you. See you later. Bye.